Hello and welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 147. I feel like there's probably a significance to that number on some level. Maybe it's prime, I don't know, but it's good to be here.
Yes.
How's H.A. Conrad today?
I am fantastic. I'm sucking down the iced coffee. Woo.
That's what you do. Yeah, so H.A. is over there, Stuart, I'm over here. We are Reanimated, and we are halfway through Fear the Walking Dead. In our review of that ongoing show. So we're bringing you another recap shortly after that show aired. Episode 6, I think, entitled Red Dirt is the topic of...
No, I thought this was 5.
This is 5? I don't remember if I changed the number in that. It is 6. Next week, July 9th, is going to be the mid-season finale for Fear the Walking Dead, because anything Fear Walking Dead related has to have a giant break in the middle. So next week, get ready for another 2-hour extravaganza. But for this week, we're dealing with just Red Dirt, and we're gonna have there's not a whole lot of zombie news out there right now. So other than one,
our favorite Forbes fanboy.
Yeah, they're really having a love-in with Fear the Walking Dead over at Forbes. So author Paul Tassi has penned another opus, another love letter to Fear the Walking Dead. If you recall from one of our previous podcasts, he had written a couple of posts in a row saying Fear the Walking Dead is really hitting all the right notes this season. And then a couple days later, Fear the Walking Dead is now the best. It's now better than the original show. And now today, or recently, it was today, since last night, he goes, Fear the Walking Dead is now successfully channeling Max Brooks' book, World War Z, which, as you know, is the highest level. It's like the mountaintop of zombie material, at least as far as many people are concerned. So
I agree.
Gosh.
This is a tall order he is putting on here. In terms of invoking that kind of comparison. I think Paul Tassi doesn't have a lot to do right now. And what's more interesting to me is to see his review of this, which talks a lot more about World War Z than it does about Fear the Walking Dead. He does have some very, like, I think he's stretching quite a bit, drawing the comparisons that he does. But what I really love is that he rounds it up by saying, everybody should read World War Z so they can see what I'm talking about. Interestingly, and really not surprisingly, other folks who have been watching along with us at the AV Club and other places are not feeling quite so positive about Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that, and I'm curious to hear what you thought, Stuart. I
haven't read the AV Club's review, but I'm just looking at their community grades, and there a lot of people are giving this episode an F, which this is why it's a little bit funny that the Forbes gent is so high on this. I guess I'm happy to reveal I kind of agree with them on a lot of levels with this particular episode. Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's jump into Red Dirt. My overview reaction to it is mostly positive. I enjoyed the fact that it was a contained story. There's nothing, this is not really a zombie episode. There's very little in the way of zombies. It's mostly a people episode. Those can be a drag, but they're necessary to, especially in a situation like Brokejaw Ranch where there's a lot of moving parts. So we are on the ranch, we're with Maddie and family, and what I enjoy about this episode is there's a lot of character development for Maddie and for Nick, people that we care about. There's also a lot of development for Troy and Jake. Well, not really. Jake is just kind of like on the same trajectory he's been on. And we get some more Jeremiah too. So I think this is it's just the main reason I like it is because it's a self-contained story. It's of the same ilk as the Daniel Salazar episode that put him, after a long departure, put him through some great story arc and character development. And this one is on that same level, even though these people we've never really left for any significant amount of time. And on the flip side, we're really leaving Ophelia out in the cold all the way to the mid-season finale. I mean, holy crap.
I know, and she has not made any kind of an appearance
Um,
whatsoever.
yeah, maybe they're just saving the best for last. So that's my big picture overview, is that I enjoyed the way that this episode pushed a lot of plot and story and character development forward. So that's why
Hmm.
I was happy with this episode. I'll
See, I didn't think that it pushed character development forward. I felt like they were really trying hard to get people places where they maybe didn't belong, especially with Troy and Maddie's relationship. I also feel like they kind of come to conclusions or have characters come to conclusions and place trust in places that they wouldn't, that don't make sense to me at all. So there's a few things in this that I don't fully enjoy. I also really don't enjoy the whole Native American Indians versus the libertarians as a plot line, like making them the enemy. Just feels very weird, and again feels misplaced given the dearth of resources and things in this world and the other things that they have to survive against. And I part of what's bothering me or just like really just troubling me, though some people really enjoyed the Troy and Maddie relationship, is that basically when they were out with the militia, she she kind of second guessed him. She didn't kind of. She did second guess his leadership and showed her own leadership. And I feel like with a character like Troy, if you do that, you're not long for this world, or he's going to try to do something to undermine you. I don't think that he was going to come into that camp as powerful as he did to talk to his dad. I think, and I also don't think he would be settling for Maddie's discussions with the people that are in power in the community. Basically, those are the things that I really was having issues with. And I think part of why I was having issues with it was that I really was enjoying some of the character development that you had mentioned. I just felt like they were taking a lot of liberties with it that they shouldn't. And I'm not like, I believe the bond between Nick and Otto to some extent. But the sort of unpredictability of Troy's behavior in the bond that he's developing with Maddie, some of the things that are going on here, just because of what she did out in when they were out kind of walking back without their shoes on.
Yeah.
I just felt like this was, from what we know about this character, his immediate reaction for anybody that shows like a level of betrayal towards him is to take them down. And that's not what happened at all in this episode. At least maybe this is like they're playing the long game with this, but I just feel like we would have seen some of that happening here a little bit more.
Well, let me respond to some of this. Because I agree with you on with some elements, like the whole Native American storyline, and yes, libertarians versus Native Americans, or any introduction of modern, like pre-apocalypse politics or
Seems lame.
race or any of these sorts of things. It's anachronistic when we project ourselves out of our current lifestyle and pre-apocalypse thinking. So there's one possible explanation for why they would feel like that's okay from a story perspective to do, and that's that these people were living on this compound before the apocalypse happened, and so they're stuck in an old way of thinking. Of course, that doesn't explain why the Native American tribe, which by the way they call the Black Hats,
Yeah, which is weird.
that's just like that means bad guys in like every vernacular
Right.
I know. So okay. Either way, so it doesn't explain why the Black Hat tribe would be still pursuing a similarly anachronistic track of thought, which is that this group of people stole our land generations ago, perhaps, is what it sounds like from Jeremiah Otto. But there is definitely a lot of hinting about a violent incident early on in the creation of Brokejaw Ranch that they talk about through some hints and drunken mumbling later on in the episode. So I do agree that this I guess it's the main kind of point of tension and plot point for this season of white man versus Indian is bad, and it's not a great place for the show to be I, however, do give Maddie and Troy a pass, although I am incredulous about her decision. I really
Mm-hmm.
like the symmetry in the storytelling, where on the one hand, Alicia is propping up Jake to be the leader, and on the other hand, Maddie is propping up Troy to be the leader. I think that Maddie is making a terrible decision in
Mm-hmm.
in this respect, but I still really like that there's this cool symmetry of mother daughter with the two different brothers who are basically like the angel and the demon or whatever. It's so I'm enjoying the way that that's getting set up, even though
I did.
it's hard, it's really
Yeah.
hard to believe that Maddie would think that this guy, when she, like you said, when she has exhibited the fact that she is probably a better leader than he is, why she would be supporting him with the only possible explanation is that he has the name and the blood,
Mm.
in his veins that would let him give him legitimate authority over these people.
Well, okay, and this is the other part that just keeps sort of nagging at me is that even when we saw him out with his team of men, with the militia, and Maddie was so very easily able to basically call the shots, keep in mind, she's only joined this group of people very
Yeah.
recently. There was definitely some antagonism there from the group toward her. She manages to somehow win over their loyalty in one weird walker melee by with the convict walkers, and gets, even though she quite honestly did not perform all that well. And then I know she stood up at the on the compound with Walker, but it still seems a little too easy to me that they would put their trust in her. But the only explanation for me on that point is that they really don't trust Troy. And we have seen a lot of this, that people tolerate some of his behavior because he's clearly effective in clearing walkers. And they, I think, have kind of, basically accepted the fact, or at least again, tolerated the fact that he is what he is, but he's useful out there in the wild. But when you see him back in the compound, people don't have that same feeling about him. There's a lot of distrust of him. Quite honestly, there's a lot of fear of him. Even when he is on the compound explaining what happens, there is distrust amongst the rest that, like, he wants to go and talk to his father in private about what happened with the Black Hats.
Well,
There
that makes
is
sense. That's just simple. Don't create a panic when you. This is a problem with their
no, no, I
this is a
agree,
problem with
but
their
I'm just
community, whether they have like a warrior cast and a sheep cast,
mhm.
and yeah, warriors cast information should be handled internally, because unfortunately,
Right.
this another anachronistic thing about this community is that they have a group of people who is responsible, which is responsible for protecting the whole establishment. When we know that everybody needs to be a fighter in this
Yeah.
world, right? Like, this is something that we've seen in other communities that doesn't work, like Alexandria.
But even amongst his own men, like they totally undermine him because they say out loud his friend, ultimate betrayal, basically outs all the information to everybody in front of everybody about what happened. So I just feel like some of the things we see from Troy and some of the reactions of the people, I don't really fully buy it. I just think that I feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job if that's the way they were going to go, showing a little bit more respect for Troy to some extent. Like, if they really think of him as this warrior and somebody that they trust to lead them, I don't know that we would have been seeing such dissension in the ranks, and such loyalty towards somebody who had just recently joined them. Yeah, I mean, that said, I did like how there is definitely a crisis at hand, in terms of what happens when you have people that have been part of this community for a really long time start to get scared and start to rebel. I don't like. This is kind of interesting because you have these old people, the other founder Phil, basically saying he wants to leave and
That's
that he thinks
Vernon.
that this would
Phil's the
sorry
guy with the
Vernon
crow on his head.
Vernon, rather, and saying that he wants to leave. And it's interesting because you're seeing that Otto is ceding authority to his sons, but specifically to Jake, and very, being very passive about the whole thing. But kind of feel if this were a real situation, if there's a run on the supplies, like I don't know that you could really allow that to happen without putting the safety of your whole community at risk. I don't know. That was kind of an interesting idea. What did you think about that? Because it's a weird concept. Like, fine if you leave, but what are you gonna? How do you determine what people take or don't take?
Well, they have this whole system of rules that I don't even understand entirely, but it ends up being like a toothless deal. Like people, yeah, there's a run on supplies, but then they don't leave the compound. Like, I don't know why more people aren't leaving with Vernon, or when they see Vernon leave, he's gone overnight and nobody else has left apparently. And then by the end of the episode, we're watching all these people bring supplies back to the pantry. And it's kind of interesting that they toy with the idea of a run, like on the banks, as it were, but then they don't really follow through with it. I mean, if they had, then Brokejaw would probably be done. Yeah, people had to bring in supplies to buy into the community originally. However, it's hard to know how much of their stock that really was. You know, whether or not they could have survived if everybody pulled out everything that they had brought in. If Otto had actually amassed more than he needed or something. That's a question I have about that. It's interesting that that doesn't go anywhere. And
right.
At least Troy is there kind of like threatening everybody who's taking stuff out, because I feel like that is a realistic response to that, especially from someone like him.
The other thing that I thought was a little bit unusual, and again, they're trying to show the character building, they're trying to show basically, you know, you've got Nick, Alicia, and Madison all doing their own kind of, I don't want to call it manipulation, but they are positioning themselves. And I found it a little bit odd that Otto places so much trust in Nick.
Yeah.
And so quickly again. And also, like, if he's trying to build up Jake into this leader that supposedly he's the heir apparent, why is he sharing so much with Nick? And just kind of blowing Jake off or just telling Jake to get strong, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be giving Nick a lot more guidance in terms of life, you know, the universe, whatnot, than we see him. He really is quite dismissive of Jake for the most part, even though he's like, you need to be out and seen in the community. It's a little weird.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts on that part?
It's kind of weird and like a trait of the series that Nick gets somehow embraced by these leaders all the time. He's embraced by, I'm not going to remember any of their names anymore, but the woman who runs Thomas's estate, like, because he goes out and finds her son, the zombie, is basically why they explain that one. He is embraced by the dude who runs the Colonia, and Luciana. Why? Not really clear, other than that he had walked like he was one of the dead, and they all kind of, they had that weird culty sort of vibe about zombies. And so now again with Otto, it's starting to feel a little repetitive, and there's like each time there's less of a explanation for why these leader figures are drawn to him.
Right.
So yes.
But I think what I'm part of what I'm trying to say though is that this particular community, it's like, I don't know, it just feels like they had put a lot of thought into how it was going to run, supposedly, and yet this seems to be falling apart pretty quickly over something that's like, you would imagine that if these were all people of like-minded thought, they were together before the whole apocalypse, basically, that there would be some more solidity in terms of what they're doing. And I think some of that could be written off, like, as Madison says, they don't know what's out there. They really don't. And you're sending out these people. Vernon's just taking his family out because he says there's like another compound somewhere, right? Like
Colorado.
Yeah. It's weird to me that you would have these very like-minded people who, quite honestly, are fundamentalists in terms of how they're thinking. That they would all fall apart this easily. And quite honestly, that this family would be so easily integrated within the community. But whatever, we will take that premise. What I think is a little bit more interesting is Madison's kind of judgy opinion about what Alicia is doing when she's doing just exactly the same thing.
How do you mean?
She was like, when she's questioning her about Jake, and she was like, oh, in that order? Like, because Alicia's like saying, oh, he's important, I like him, and whatever. And, Madison's just like, oh, in that order, like just in a very judgy way. And it's like, dude, you are dealing with a psychopath.
Yeah.
Like,
it's weird that they're not talking
really
to each other more about exactly what they're doing, right? Why would Madison
Right.
just be like, okay, I'm going to go off and do my own thing, mind screwing Troy and pretending to be his mother lover. Meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
Nick, you go do whatever you want. Actually, they've never had any control over Nick, so he is going to do whatever he
No.
wants. But
Yeah.
at least have like a game plan with Alicia, because it feels like they're working at odds against one another.
Right.
Or maybe
and
they're
also
just covering all the bases. Who knows?
They could be, but also the interesting thing about the Nick and Madison component is that, he has shown himself he stayed. He did not go after Luciana.
Well, which was actually surprising. Like, at the beginning of this episode,
Yeah.
he's hanging out with Jeremiah shooting targets, and I'm like, wait, he's not even.
Gonna look
There's
for
like
her or
no
anything?
reaction about this, but they do talk about it a couple times throughout the episode.
Yeah, you would think, especially given Madison's huge speech about taking over the place,
Yeah.
that, this was, I'm not forgetting about that she would be communicating a little bit more. If her reason is to protect her children, it seems like they would coordinate efforts a little bit more. And maybe they have, maybe they are, and we're not seeing those
Right.
dialogues.
This could definitely
And-
be that TV trope of, oh, we think they're losing, but actually they're winning. Yeah.
Right, and they're just going to keep us in the dark so that it's more interesting when it all comes to pass.
Yeah.
But I can't disagree with Nick. Like when we see the very sad ending of Vernon and his family, Nick's kind of like calling a spade a spade. He's just like, do not forget that this dude is a monster. And
That's hilarious, that scene, because he says that to Maddie. It's one of their relatively few honest interactions. He says that to her, and then the very next scene, she's walking to Troy and giving him her speech about, you're the leader, try not to be so much of a psycho.
Yeah.
But we know what he's capable of, and I feel like everybody knows that he doesn't have control over his predilections.
Mm-mm.
So why
So-
it's very, this is a strange thing for her to decide to do, but I'm taking it in terms of Maddie is making a calculated, I don't know, gamble, but it's definitely super risky.
Well, she seems pretty confident that she's got control over like the wild dog, which is kind of the attack dog,
Yeah.
which is a bit of what he is. What's interesting is that even Otto is appalled by the fact that he did what he did
Yeah.
to this family. This is like his best friend for 30 years. Like he's just kind of like, he doesn't even know what to do. And I do under kind of what I thought was going to happen, and maybe this is still the case, I don't know, but part of what I thought was going on was the main concern would be to keep people there, not have them scatter and everybody run away and have the run on the supplies, which we've already kind of seen happen. And I thought that's why she was going to hide it. But she doesn't consult Otto. She doesn't consult Nick. She just kind of goes off on her own and tells the community, "Oh, it's dangerous out there. This is what happened," and puts all the blame at the feet of at Walker and the Black Hats.
Yeah, that's a real Machiavellian type move right there, right? It's like kind of amoral.
And so I kind of thought what she was doing there, because she clearly is giving Troy some eyes, like, I know that you did this. Even while she's doing her speech, I thought she was going to go and like hold it over his head or do something. And I mean, maybe it is the genius move to make him think that you're on his side and to prop him up, but you're giving him a lot more power in this community.
Well, I
And
thought it was
it's
well.
dangerous.
I thought this scene was well shot because Troy, the guy playing Troy, I forget his name, he looks so guilty. Right?
Oh yeah, no,
and
totally.
and Nick is moving into the crowd and he's giving Nick side eye, like, "What are you gonna do?" And I think nobody knows what Maddie's about to do, and including the audience. And it's a real dick move that she does, but it's also effective, and it might be for the greater good of keeping this community together and alive, which is the only real silver lining. But it's also laying this groundwork for a major conflict.
Well, and the other thing that she does here, and I do think that this is a shift, and we'll see what happens in the next episode, is she's basically saying that they all have to fight. That they have to stay there, they have to be together, and they have to be strong, and they have to fight. And so I wonder if we're going to see more of an overall change in the community in terms of that. It's long overdue. If, in fact, I just don't buy that this community's been staying like it has been for so long, just having a small portion of them out there. She does mention their militia, their force, but she's basically, it seems like it's like a call to arms. But, you know, again, it did not sit totally well with me that she's the one speaking, that Otto is not speaking, that they were going to totally take what she says at face value. And, you know, she's definitely, like, we heard a little bit from Gretchen earlier that her brother had given Maddie credit with them all coming back alive. So maybe there's some of those whisperings going on that are giving her a lot more credibility within the community. It still doesn't sit quite right, though. I still feel like there would be such fear in this community that they might just scatter. But I guess that's not the case, at least within this world, in the writer's world.
Yeah, I think it's a balance between the fear of the unknown and fear that it's their community's being mismanaged, and they're going to probably go with fear of the unknown being the harder one to suck up and drive into. So you brought up Gretchen. She gets some more lines in this episode, and that one scene with Maddie, where, by the way, did you notice Maddie is sharpening the end of a collapsible baton, which I think is awesome. If that's going to be her like signature weapon, now that she used a baton one time already, now she's sharpening one, and wow, I looked, and she did kind of whip it out when they were looking at Vernon's camper. I thought that was. I'm pretty excited for that weapon. That's all I'm saying. It's just like,
it's a good weapon.
That's awesome.
It's
although
a good
she's
idea.
probably going to cut herself when she tries to put it back in, like collapse
True.
it. But she has Gretchen has some nice lines there with Maddie and expresses her fear. It's less of the party talk, but then she's like, well, I guess we're going to be going. And then we see her sad face in the camper window. And then ultimately she's the last reveal, because I think, the show has made us like her. And so they revealed last that she is the fourth and final member of the Vernon Trimble family to be slaughtered. So poor Gretchen has left the building. It's a loss, but she was also one of these kind of like lighthearted characters that was designed in the Walking Dead universe to be a sacrificial offering. I just wasn't sure when it was going to happen.
And I'm kind of taking bets about what when Jake seems to be just making it pretty easy to go away, just sort of the decisions that he's making.
But now Alicia is going after him.
I know.
So we're setting up another scenario where, well, this is actually good. So this could put Alicia in harm's way, and she's going to have to become badass Alicia, climbing up elevator shafts to get out of the scenario. Which, you know, even if that costs Jake as a character on the show, I think we all agree that he doesn't have long to last, and especially now that they're maneuvering for Maddie and Troy's relationship, I think that only spells the end of Jake even more starkly.
Right. Well, I feel like a little bit of the reveal that might happen is what the actual story is behind what happened with the land and with the tribe and with Otto's group. So I kind of feel that that's part of where we're going to here. And I feel like Jake knows more than he's letting on.
Well, he has that one throwaway line about Phil McCauley or whatever his name is, the dude with the raven on his head, where he just says he was a bad man. So he knows something. All the comments about there's blood in the land when Jeremiah is super drunk. Yep. There's definitely a secret which is gonna come to light that they probably just murdered a bunch of Native Americans who had, I don't know.
Yep. So I feel like something's gonna happen that we reveal what's actually happening here, and maybe. And this is what I'm wondering, is that if Alicia goes to save Jake and finds out about all of this, is there going to be a shift? I kind of feel like we are going to see Ophelia in this next section, and that may be the big reveal, is that Ophelia is with the Black Hats, and maybe even Luciana. And I think we're going to see there may be a whole Alicia versus Maddie component that happens. So I'm curious to see. I'm looking forward to the season, the mid-season. Yeah,
they'll have an hour and 30 minutes to wrap up this part of this storyline. What's going to be interesting to see is if they just stick with it, or if they're going to go and be like, all right, and this is what Strand's doing, and this is what Daniel's doing. And,
I hope they don't do that. But I think you may be right.
Well, they don't have to address it, but I'm curious. At the same time as I don't want to like a very fragmented story. I want to know what the hell Strand is up to, because is he just done? No, there's no way,
Yeah, I
and
don't
neither is
know.
Daniel. So maybe they'll just let us chill with those two until the next part of the season. But I don't know, it'd be kind of a shame to not know anything.
True.
Give us a post credit scene at least.
Something. In any case, there was some good and bad in this. I do agree that this is a much more successful season than we've ever seen with Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Maybe it will, for me anyway, redeem itself in the mid-season finale. But I also am wondering if we're gonna see Travis come back as a walker in this one too, since they're all going out into the wild.
Yeah, there's a chance that could happen, I guess, because he definitely did not have a head wound, but he could have
Nope.
He could have smashed his head. They were a few hundred feet up, I think, or maybe they weren't that high.
True.
I think they were.
I feel like that is something that they might save for a mid-season.
Mm,
Something where we see Alicia having to deal with him in the wild. But,
super messed up Cliff Curtis. Well, yeah,
yep.
that could happen.
But anyway, I would love to hear what other folks think about this particular episode. So if you would like to drop us a line, send us a message, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can drop a line on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Listen along with us next time when we go into the mid-season finale of Fear the Walking Dead season 3.
Sweet. So until next time, ciao.
Thanks for listening. Bye.